Some text, we've added some numbers. The next logical step is to insert formulas or functions that will perform calculations on the numbers we've added. In our Landon Hotels revenue sheet here, that means summing up the different columns. Now, if you need to get caught up, open up RH Revenues 0104 from the Chapter 1 folder of your exercise files and click in cell C11. This is where we want our answer to go, which is the total of these four numbers under the January column. Now, there are different ways to create formulas, but they all start the same way, and that is with the equal sign. Type in the equal sign, and your formula is underway. You'll also notice on the formula bar, the equal sign appears. We could build our formula up here. We can use the X to cancel out of what we're typing in, accept, or press the Enter key on your keyboard to accept the formula you've entered. And we can continue down here in the cell building our formula. Eventually, though, all we're going to see here is the answer. So you might be tempted to type in 2.95, then a plus sign, 3.11, and so on till we get all four numbers entered. Pressing Enter would give you the right answer. But if you went back to any of these cells and changed one of those numbers, your formula would not update automatically. You'd have to edit it as well. So we're going to backspace over those numbers, and instead it would make better sense to add up the cells. So whatever's in the cell is what gets added up. In this case, we want C6, so we'll type in C6. And as soon as we do, you can see it's highlighted. It knows that's the number we want to use. Now add the plus sign. Type in C7. Now add another plus sign, C8. Another plus sign, and C9. Notice all four numbers are highlighted in their own colors. We can press Enter, or you could click the check mark up here next to the formula bar to get the answer, which is 10.51. When we click that cell, we can see the formula up above in the formula bar that gives us that answer. And that means if we go to London, for example, under January, where we entered the incorrect value and change it to 3.95 and press Enter, you can see our total is updated automatically because we added up the cells, not the numbers in those cells. All right, now there might be another way to do this. If we go back to cell C11, you can see that's a lot of typing. And if we had multiple locations, you wouldn't want to have to type out all of these cell addresses. Instead, there are built-in functions that are part of Excel that give you a bit of a shortcut. So press the Delete key on your keyboard to remove the contents from cell C11, and instead, we're going to use one of the built-in functions. Hit the equal sign, and now type in the word sum. You can see there are some options down below, functions that begin with the word sum, including the sum function, which adds all the numbers in a range of cells. That's exactly what we want. So double-click it, and it's in there now. You can see there's a round bracket, and all we need is the range. Now, we could type in the range. We could type it in C6 colon C9. And we get all those numbers. Or, even easier, just click and drag across the numbers you want to total up. So we'll click and drag from C6 down to C9. You can see it's building the formula in the cell and on the formula bar. All we need now is a closing round bracket. So let's add that and press Enter. There's our answer. And that was much faster than typing out all of those cells with plus signs. You can see when we click in cell C11, the sum function makes it a lot faster to get the answer. Could there be an even faster way? Well, for some functions, there are some further shortcuts. Let's hit delete one more time. We'll remove that function and instead go to the Formulas tab up here in the ribbon. You'll see something called AutoSum. And if you click the drop-down arrow, there are other ones too, like average, counting up numbers, finding the maximum or minimum numbers in a range. But this is the one we want, AutoSum. So we can click the top half of the button or from the drop-down choose Sum. Watch what happens. Automatically, this function goes looking for numbers. Are there any to the left? No. To the right? No. Down below? No. But there are some up above. And that's why that range is highlighted there. It includes the blank row as well because it's right above our cell in cell C11. So we could press Enter and get our answer. Or we could do a little editing if we wanted to. Instead of C6 to C10, we could change that. Just click right in the cell itself and take out the 10 and type in a 9. You can see the new range is highlighted. That's what we want. Press enter, and there's our answer, thanks to AutoSum. So you can type out your formulas manually. You can use built-in functions, and there are many, many functions to help you along. Some of them are automated, like AutoSum. Now all we need to do is get that same formula or function underneath February and March. The fastest way to do that is to copy it using relative addressing. We'll talk about that next. Quite often when we add a formula or function, as we did in the previous movie, it's going to refer to a certain range of cells. And odds are pretty good that it could be used for other ranges of cells, which is the case for our Land & Hotels revenue sheet. You can open up RH Revenues 0105 if you need to get caught up. Here we entered our formula in cell C11 for our January figures, but we could use that same formula for February and March as well. Now, if we wanted to, we could fill in those formulas or functions by typing them out just as we did for the original. But what's really cool about Microsoft Excel is it uses relative cell addressing. That means if we copy the formula here in cell C11 to D11, it knows to use the numbers in column D. And if we copy it to column E, it knows to use the numbers in column E. That is relative cell addressing. And if we wanted to, we could go to the cell, go up to our Home tab here and use copy and paste if we wanted to. But there's an even faster way. You may have noticed that the cell, when it's selected or highlighted, there's a little handle in the bottom right-hand corner. Well, that handle can be used to copy the cell contents. When you move your mouse pointer, the white cross, over that handle, it turns into a smaller black cross. That means you're on the handle and ready to start clicking and dragging. So let's click and drag to the right 2 cells. When you see those 2 cells selected, release, and you've just copied the formula to those cells. So if we click in cell C11 and look at the formula, the function, which is sum of the range C6 to C9, when we go to cell D11 and click there, notice it shows up as the range D6 to D9. And guess what? In column E, when we go to E11, because we copied to that cell, it knows to use the numbers in the range E6 to E9. That is relative cell addressing, and it's automatic here in Microsoft Excel. You know, Microsoft Excel is all about saving you time and helping you to work more efficiently, and that's why there's a cool feature called Autofill to help you when it comes to entering data. We're going to experiment first down the left-hand side of our worksheet here in our Land & Hotels revenue sheet we've been building. RH Revenues 0106 if you need to get caught up. Let's go to cell A13 here, and we'll type in the word Monday. Press enter and type Tuesday. Now we see a pattern. Is Excel going to see the same pattern? You bet. Click and drag over Monday and Tuesday to highlight both of those, A13 to 14. And now when we go to that little handle in the bottom right corner and our mouse pointer turns to the black cross, we know we can click and drag to copy. But because there's a pattern here, look what happens when we click and drag straight down. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it's all popping up here. We could go down to Sunday and keep going if we wanted to repeat this, or just go back up till we see Sunday pop up and release your mouse button. You've just automatically filled those cells because of the pattern. Now we don't really need this, so let's delete it and try another one. Press your delete key to remove the contents, and then just click in cell A13. This time we'll use numbers. Let's type in 2007, press enter, type in 2008, press enter. We see the pattern. Click and drag over those 2. Click and drag straight down from the handle. You're going to see 9, 10, 11, 12. We could go all the way to 2015 if we wanted to show values for each of those years. Another nice little time saver. Again, we don't need these, so we'll hit the delete key on the keyboard to remove them and go to a point in our spreadsheet where maybe we could use autofill. Look at the labels for the months. They're the short forms for January, February, and March. Is Excel going to be able to pick this up? Let's give it a try. We'll click and drag across those 3, January, February, and March. We'll go to the handle in the bottom right corner and continue to click and drag across. There's a short form for April popping up, May, June, July. Let's go all the way to December to get the entire year. And if we keep going, you can see it's going to start over with January, February, March. We just want to go as far as December. That's column N, release, and it's automatically filled in for us. All we need to do now is add the data. So that's the beauty of autofill, a nice little time saver that's going to pick up patterns in Microsoft Excel. Experiment with different types of text and numbers. As you continue to add data, formulas, and functions to your worksheets, it's important to save your changes. If something were to go wrong, like a power outage, a disk crash, you don't want to have to redo your work. So saving often is a good idea. We're going to talk about saving in this movie as we continue with our Land & Hotels revenue sheet we've been building. As you can see, I've added some more numbers here for each of the months. And if you want to add those yourself, go ahead, or just go to the Chapter 1 folder of your exercise files and open up RH Revenues 0107. Then you'll have exactly what I have. Now, as you add content and make changes to your worksheet, you can be updating those changes on the fly. Let's go down to the formula here in cell E11. Just click in that cell. You can see it's a sum formula for the numbers up above. We're going to go down to the handle in the bottom corner of that cell. When we see our mouse pointer turn to the black cross, click and drag all the way across so that we're copying that formula right through the December column N, and you can see the totals show up. The numbers are formatted a little bit differently. Some have 3 decimal places, others do not, but we'll worry about formatting later. For now, at least, we have our formulas in there. Let's save our changes. Just go up to the Quick Access toolbar and click the Save button. There you go. Everything's been saved up. If something goes wrong, you won't have to redo any work at this point. Let's make another change over here. We'll go to cell 04 and type in the word totals there. Maybe it'd be nice to have totals for all of the numbers for each of our locations. So down below in the totals column in cell 06 for London, let's use the auto sum feature we talked about in a previous movie by going to formulas and clicking auto sum right at the top. Because there are numbers showing up to the left of that cell, it knows to use those to create the total, the sum function. Using that range, press enter, and there's your answer. And now we can go to that cell, 06, and go to the handle in the bottom right corner. And when we see the black cross, click and drag straight down to copy that formula to the other 3 cells. And there we go. Again, we'll want to save our changes by clicking the Save button or use the keyboard shortcut Control-S as in save. Now, what if you want to save to a different format? Maybe you're going to be sharing this with someone who has an older version of Excel, let's say, before version 2007 came out. Well, in that case, you'll want to go up to the File tab, click there to go to Backstage View, and select Save As. And it's from here where you can choose different locations. You could choose to save it to the cloud. We'll talk about that later when we discuss sharing options. You could find a place in your PC or just use the Browse option here if you don't see one of the current or older folders showing up on a recent list on the right. Click Browse and you get to choose a location, but you also get to choose other things like the name. If you want to change the name, there's the file name in the file name field. I think that name's okay. What we do want to do is change the format by going to the Save As Type drop-down. You can see Excel Workbook shows up right now. Click the drop-down and you'll see some other options like older versions of an Excel workbook. Right now, the extension is .xlsx, which is a format that was adopted in Excel 2007 going forward. But if someone's using Excel 2003 or even earlier versions of Excel, you'll want to save it to this older format. Notice all of the other options here as well. For example, you could save to templates. You could save to text files like CSV or comma delimited. That's where each of your cells is represented as data and is separated by commas. You can see some other text formats down here as well. Even some read-only formats. If you want to create a PDF or XPS document out of your worksheet, you could do that too. But we might want to share this with others using older versions of Excel. So we'll go to Excel 97 to 2003 workbook, give it a click. It'll get a new extension. That's an XLS extension without the X. And when we click Save, we just saved it to an older format. Keeping in mind that there are certain features and functions in the new Excel that maybe we won't be able to use in this format. But that's how you save and save to other locations, formats, and names here in Excel 2016. Well, now that we have all of our content added to our worksheet, we have our text, we have our numbers, we have formulas, calculating those numbers. It's time to make this look nice. So we're going to look at formatting, beginning with formatting text. And we're going to do it with our Landon Hotels revenue sheet. If you need to get caught up, just open up RH Revenues 0201. We're going to go to cell A1 and click there. You'll notice on the formula bar, we see all of the content, Landon Hotels revenue 2014 in millions of US dollars. And that's because we entered it there. It appears that there's content in columns B, C, D, and E here as well. But we know that this is simply overlapping those empty cells. And because they're empty, we're able to see everything. If we go to cell B1, there's nothing there. So formatting cells B, C, D, or E1 would actually accomplish nothing. We have to go to cell A1 where the content is. And now to change the formatting, it's just like you do in most word processing applications. Check out the Home tab of your ribbon. There's a font group here and an alignment group. Let's start with the font group. You can see the default font for the spreadsheet that we created. It's the default using a default theme, including this font. If we click the drop down, we can change to different fonts. You'll see theme fonts at the top. And if we go down to all fonts down below, you'll see an alphabetical listing of the fonts installed on your computer. Now, most people are going to have Arial Black. As we hover over this, you can see in the background, it's giving us a preview of what we can expect. If we went to a different one, you can see how they would look as well. I'm thinking Arial Black is a good one. It really stands out. Give it a click. And you can see how it's really changed the look of our worksheet already. Now let's go to the font size. There's a drop down here. You can see the default is 11, but we can bump it up to some of these presets like 12, 14, 16. Let's try 16 by giving it a click. Looks pretty good. If we want to bump it up, we also have buttons to increase or decrease the font size. Let's increase it. It goes to the next preset, 18. There's 20. Let's bump it down now, back to 16. I think that's a good size. The other thing we might want to do now is change the color of the font. There is a text or font color button. Click the drop down, and you'll see some theme colors to choose from. And by choosing theme colors, you're going to ensure if you change the theme later from the default theme, which is just a set of colors and fonts and so on, that the colors will change when you change themes. If you go to standard colors, you'll be setting the color permanently. So even when you change themes, that color will not change. Let's go to one of the theme colors like a nice dark blue here and give it a click. Okay, that looks different. Now we can also format contents in multiple cells by clicking and dragging across them. Or if you prefer, let's say we want to get all of this and maybe location as well, and anything else we might add in these columns off to the right. In that case, we want to select the entire row. We can do that by clicking the header for row 4. Click right on the 4. You can see the entire row is selected. Now we can make changes like bolding, for example. Let's turn bolding on for this. We'll keep the same font and size. And I think probably everything should be centered in the cell. So we'll go to the alignment group here and choose centered. There we go. Notice location is also centered. So if we wanted to change just that cell, we click that cell, A4, and send it back to left align. There we go. Now we can select the cells down below, click and drag from London down to totals. Those should be bolded as well, I think, and we'll keep them left aligned as is. So click anywhere to deselect what we've highlighted, and you can see the end results clearly here by making a few adjustments to our fonts and our alignments. We've really changed the look of our worksheet. Next, we'll focus on numbers, which can be formatted like we format text, but there are additional options when working with numbers. We'll talk about those next. When formatting numbers in your worksheet, you have access to all of the text formatting options we discussed in the previous movie, but you also get some number formatting options we need to explore. And we'll do that with our Landon Hotels revenue sheet here. You can open up RH Revenues 0202 from the Chapter 2 folder of your exercise files if you're catching up. Let's start by selecting all of the numbers we want to format, which happens to be all of the numbers in this sheet. So we'll start at cell C6, go across to column O and down to row 11, and release. Once we have all of our numbers selected, we can now apply the same formatting to all of our numbers for a consistent look and feel. Because you will notice some of the numbers actually have 3 decimal places while most have 2. Everything's right aligned in the cell. So we can fix that up by going up to the number group here on the ribbon with the Home tab selected. You can see the number format is already applied by default, and all that means is we see a number with decimals. Click the drop down and you'll see some other preset formats like accounting, for example. Click there. All this does is adds a $sign to the left-hand side of the cell and changes everything to 2 decimal places, so there will be all this does is adds already applied by default, and all that means is we see a number with decimals. Click the drop down and you'll see some other preset formats like accounting, for example. Click there. All this does is adds a $sign to the left-hand side of the cell and change the number format is already applied by default, and all that means is we see a number with decimals. Click the drop down and you'll see some other preset formats like accounting, for example. Click there. All this does is adds a $sign to the left-hand side of the cell and changes everything to 2 decimal places, so there will be some rounding up and rounding down for those numbers that had 3 decimal places to give us the correct answer here. Let's go back up to the drop down and try currency. It's very similar. Again, it's 2 decimal places, but the $sign is next to the number as opposed to in the left-hand side of each cell. I kind of like that better. Now there are other options here too. Click the drop down. You'll see we could use the British pound and euros, other options here as well. But we'll just leave it at the $sign. Now look what happens when you choose English United States. It changes it back to accounting. So I would go back up here, click the drop down, and switch it back to currency. There are also percentages and comma formats to choose from here, but you'll also notice a couple of buttons for increasing and decreasing the number of decimals. If you wanted 3 decimals, you could bump it up. Let's bump it up. And you can see what happens here. Bump it up again and we're up to 4 decimal places if we needed that type of accuracy. I don't think we do because the last digit in every number is 0. So we could bump it down. I would actually go down, back down to 2. If you wanted to go down to 1, you could do that as well. Let's bump it up to 2 and leave it like that. All right, if we wanted to change the alignment, we can go into some of those text options we explored in the previous movie. Let's center all of our numbers under our titles. You can see what that looks like. Typically not done with numbers, but in this case, to make it look nice and consistent with our labels across the top, this looks pretty good. And we could also do things like bolding, italics, underline, changing the font and size and color. But I think if we click in the background here in an empty cell to deselect everything, that looks pretty good. So when formatting numbers, you can format them like you can with text, but you also get all of those number formatting options at your disposal here in Excel 2016. There may be times when you need to add dates or dates and times to a worksheet, and they all come with their own formatting, which we're going to explore in this movie. Using our Landon Hotels revenue sheet we've been building, let's go to cell A2 and click there. If you're skipping to this movie and you need to get caught up, just open up RH Revenues 0203. Now we can type in dates many different ways. You can type it in with slashes or dashes, day, month, year, or month, day, year, and so on. But it really doesn't matter how you type it in the cell. It's going to appear a certain way in the formula bar, and the formatting can be changed in the cell itself. So let's type in something like, how about 08-OCT for October dash. I'm going to type out the full year, 2015, and press enter. You can see what happens. Default formatting is applied. It's a short form for the year, so it's 8-OCT with a capital O and then 15 for the year. Click cell A2 and check out the formula bar. This is the actual formula for the date. It is month, day, year using slashes. So that's how we enter the dates up here in the formula bar. The way it appears down below is up to us, and there are different date formats to choose from. So let's experiment with some of them. With cell A2 selected and the Home tab on the ribbon selected, let's go over to the Number Format group and click the drop-down. Here, you're going to see a couple of date options. There's Short Date, and it's going to appear the way it appears in the formula bar. Let's give it a click. You can see it's just 10/8/2015. Let's go back and try the Long Date. You can see it's going to add the day of the week, and it's just the long version of the date. Now, not only does it change the formatting, but it changes the width of our column to accommodate it. We'll worry about that a little bit later. Now there are other date formats to choose from. Let's go back to the drop down. This time go way down to the bottom and click More Number Formats. This opens up a dialog for formatting cells. The number tab should be selected and date should be selected on the category list. Over here on the right, you'll see a number of different formats to choose from, way more than we saw from the drop down. Some of them may have asterisks as well, and these will be based on the actual system settings on your computer. So you may see asterisks next to different options than me. That's okay. We can select from any of these. So I'm thinking maybe, how about something like this? Very standard. The month, the day, a comma, and the full 4-digit year. The example here is March 14th, 2012. There's what it's going to look like up at the top under Sample. I like that one. We'll click OK. And you can see it changes it. It is right aligned in the cell, so we might want it to be left aligned. No problem. We can do that from the alignment group here. And now I think I like exactly what we have. Just click in the background in an empty cell so nothing's highlighted. You get a good look at it. This could be the perfect format for you, but experiment with formats you like. Now it did change the width of our column. You'll also notice that when we changed the formatting for our title and created a larger font here, the row height changed as well. We have full control over column widths and row heights, and we'll talk about that next. Another way to change the look of your worksheets here in Excel, maybe make them easier to read, is to modify rows and columns. There may be occasions when you need to insert rows and columns, or maybe remove rows and columns, or change the column widths and row heights. That's what we're going to do in this movie with our Landon Hotels revenue sheet we've been building. And if you need to get caught up, just open up RH Revenues 0204. You'll have what I have. Let's start with column A because the width of column A was changed for us when we added a date format that was a little bit wider than the one we see here. So if we want to change the width of a column, there are a number of different options. The easiest way, if you want to do it visually, is to go to the separator between columns A and B. You'll notice your mouse pointer turn into a double-sided arrow pointing left and right. That means you can now click and drag to increase the width or decrease the width by going left. We want to decrease it a little bit, not so far that everything's crammed into the column, but that everything fits nicely and maybe with a little extra space. You can see the width up top, 16.29, and in pixels there. As you move across, you can be very specific if you want to. Just release when you think it looks good, and you've changed the column width. Now another option is to just click anywhere in the column, in this case column A, and with the Home tab of the ribbon selected, go into the Cells group. There is a Format drop-down for formatting rows and columns, including an option to be very specific with our column width. Let's give it a click. Now we get to type in a value. I'm thinking maybe 17 would be perfect, a nice round number. Click OK. You can see it is increased ever so slightly. All right, we might have an extra column here we don't need. When you don't need columns or rows, you can select them by clicking the header. In this case, we'll click the B over column B. And if we don't need it, one option is to go back up to the Cells group here on the ribbon and go to the Delete drop-down. From here, we can delete cells, rows. If we had a row selected, we don't, so it's not available. And there it is, Delete Sheet Columns. If we'd selected multiple columns, they'd all be getting deleted, but it's just column B selected. So when we click Delete Sheet Columns, away it goes. Notice the new column B is filled up with January data now. So when we click in the background here to deselect, it looks like things are getting a little cramped over here on the left. We might want to increase the width again. Let's go in between A and B and just stretch it out to create some extra space. There, that's a little bit easier to read. Now we might also want to do the same with rows. Notice we have a blank row here, row 3. Well, we could click 3 and do the same thing, go up to the Delete drop-down and choose to delete rows this time, but there is a shortcut. Just right-click the 3, and from the pop-up menu, you'll notice Delete is an option. And in this case, because it's a row that's selected, that's what will be deleted. And it is deleted, it's removed, and now when we click anywhere down below, for example, you can see it does look a little bit cramped. In fact, maybe we want to add some additional data across the top for quarters 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's go back to row 3, click and drag down to 4, so we've selected 2 rows, And if we want to insert extra rows, we can do it from the Insert dropdown up here in the Cells group. You can see cells or rows. Or if we had columns selected, we'd be able to insert columns. Or again, you can right-click and from here choose Insert. That's the fastest way to get 2 new rows added. And now we have space to add our headers here for the different quarters, plus that extra space in between our date row and the rest. All right, so when it comes to working with rows and columns and inserting and deleting them, we can do it by right-clicking or go to the Cells group. Column widths can be changed by going in between the headers. Same thing goes for row heights. Maybe this first row where we see our title, which is already a little bit higher than the others thanks to the large font we selected, we can go in between those headers too. Notice when we go in between 1 and 2, we get the double arrow, but this time pointing up and down. Click and drag straight down, and you can increase the row height. So if we go down to say around 40, you can see that looks pretty good. We could also go up to the Format dropdown. So all we have to do is be anywhere in the first row. From the Format dropdown, go to Row Height. And from here, let's get it to exactly 40 by typing in 40 and clicking OK. You can see what that looks like. The only other thing we might want to adjust is how the title in cell A1 is lined up. It's on the left, that's fine. But vertically, it might be nice if it was centered. And we do have an alignment option here in the alignment group on the ribbon. You can see currently it's vertically aligned to the bottom, but there's top and middle here as well. Let's go to Middle Align. That looks pretty good. We'll click in an empty cell down below to deselect. I think I like the looks of that. So when it comes to formatting your rows and columns, there is a specific group on the ribbon labeled Cells for formatting, inserting, and deleting. But keep in mind those shortcuts by right-clicking Headings for columns and rows. You get many of those options at your fingertips. In an Excel 2016 worksheet, you have over 1 million rows to work with and over 16,000 columns to work with. Now, if you start to add so much data that you can't see it all in one screen, there are some cool features to help you with getting things lined up. We can freeze rows and columns, also known as panes, and that's what we're going to do in this movie with our Landon Hotels revenue sheet, RH Revenues 0205, if you're getting caught up. This can also be an issue when you zoom in. Let's go down to our zoom slider down below and click the plus sign. I'm going to zoom in to over 140%. I'm going to go up to 150, and you'll notice now we have a scroll bar here that allows us to scroll left to right. And when we go over to the right to see the last few columns, we can no longer see the first column with our location. So when we look at these values, we can't really line them up with anything unless we've memorized that, okay, there they are, London, Paris, San Francisco, Hong Kong. Wouldn't it be better if we could always see this content? That means freezing column A. And when we scroll down, eventually we lose those labels for the months and we have no idea what months we're looking at here. So let's talk about freezing panes. The first thing we'll do is go up to the View tab on the ribbon, give it a click. You will see a Freeze Panes drop-down button. Give it a click, and there are 3 options. Freeze panes, we'll come back to that in a second. Freezing the top row means we'll always be able to see the top row as we scroll down. All that means is we'll always be able to see our title. That's not going to be very helpful. Freezing the first column, though, might be helpful. Let's give that a click. Notice the faint line that appears between columns A and B, and now when we use our scroll bar to scroll to the right, we always see the contents of column A. So when we go all the way over to the totals, we can see the totals and line them up with the actual locations. But as we scroll down, we still lose those labels for the different months, and we don't really know what data we're looking at. So let's scroll all the way back to the left. And instead of just freezing column A, we want to freeze column A and all of the rows above row 6 so that we can see January, February, March, etc. So in that case, we'll go up to the drop down. Now we see unfreeze panes at the top, so we'll give that a click. You can see it unfreezes that first column. And now we can choose exactly what we want to freeze. We want everything to the left of column B, so we need to click somewhere in column B. We also want to see all of the rows from 1 to 5, so that means clicking below row 5, which means by clicking in cell B6, we'll be able to see everything to the left and everything above when we go back up to freeze panes, and this time choose Freeze Panes. This allows us to freeze both rows and columns at the same time. Now look what happens when we scroll down. We'll always be able to see those labels for January, February, March, etc. And when we scroll over to the right, we've frozen that first column. So we'll always know what data we're looking at thanks to freezing panes here in Excel. Let's zoom back out to 100%. Sometimes when you want content to span several different cells, a good idea is to merge those cells into one. Take a look at our Landon Hotels revenue sheet here. Perhaps our title would look good if it was centered across the table that appears down below of data. Well, in that case, we might want to merge all of the cells from column A all the way to column N and center it across those cells. It's easily done, and that's exactly what we're going to do right now. You can open up RH Revenues 0206 if you need to catch up. Let's click and drag across from cell A1 to N1. Next, we want to merge these cells together. So we'll go back to the Home tab, and from here, we're going to merge these cells into one by going over to Merge and Center, but click the drop-down arrow to see that we can merge and center, which will do two things at once. Merge the cells and center the contents, which is our title, across the middle. We can merge across, just simply merge the cells, and if we ever want to undo the merging, we can unmerge from here. Let's just choose Merge Cells. You can see now it's one big cell, cell A1. The next cell over is O1, so there is no B, C, D, etc. in row 1, just A1 and then O1 because we merged them together. Now probably we should have done the merge and center. We can do that from here. We've already merged the cell, so instead we'll just center in the middle of that one big cell, just like that. All right, let's try it again down below. Maybe for January, February, March, we want quarter 1 or Q1 to appear above there, and then Q2, 3, and 4. So we can merge these cells. So in this case, we're looking at B, C, D, 4, and go up to Merge and Center. Even though there's no content in there, when we click in this cell and type something like Q1, you'll notice it is centered. Now we can do the same for April through June. Merge and center. July, August, September is going to be Q3. And then October, November, December will be Q4. All merged and centered. All we have to do is add the content for Q2, Q3. You can use your tab key to get to the next cell and type in Q4 and enter. There we go. So merging gives us the ability to format a little bit differently, formatting across multiple cells like this. I think everything in row 4 should be bolded. Let's click the 4 over here on the left-hand side and bold Q1 through 4. We'll deselect by clicking in an empty cell. That looks pretty good. Sometimes when adding many rows and columns of data, it's difficult to analyze that data, to pick up on trends, for example. And that's where a visual representation of the data can come in handy. That means creating charts or graphs. And there's a very easy and fast way to do it here in Excel 2016. We're going to explore it now with our Landon Hotels revenue sheet here for 2014. And we're going to focus on the data for Q1 for the different locations. You can open up RH Revenues 0207 if you're getting caught up. Now, one thing that could be a problem is any blank rows or columns when we go to select the content we want to create the chart from. So let's go to row 6 here, and we'll right-click right on the 6 to delete that empty row. Now, things do look a little bit cramped, so we can go in between 5 and 6 when we see the double arrow. Click and drag down to double up the row height. And then we'll click right on the 5 so that everything here is centered vertically. We'll go up to the alignment button to choose middle align. That looks a little bit easier to read, and it's not going to interfere with the data we select for our chart, which is going to be from cell A5 across to column D and down to get all of the values for January, February, and March. Now here in Excel, there are many powerful features and functions when it comes to creating charts and graphs. In fact, we could do a whole course on it. But to get one in here quickly that's going to allow us to pick up on trends for this data, we can go up to the Insert tab on the ribbon, give it a click, and in the Charts group, we're going to go right to recommended charts. This way, Excel is going to look at our data and figure out what charts would work best with this type of data that we've highlighted. So give it a click. Now you can see the Insert Chart dialog shows us a number of recommended charts. So here we have a clustered column, for example. There's a stacked one. We have area and line charts and graphs. Different options that will work with the data we selected. I like this clustered column here. So with that selected, you can see it's going to give us our different locations and the 3 different values so we can pick up on trends if things are going up or down. And when we click OK, there it is. We have our chart. This is an object with handles, so if we wanted to resize this, I'm going to go to the top right corner, just click and drag it down and in so it's a little bit smaller. Now I'm going to go to the border, not on a handle, so I can click and drag it down below Q1 here. That looks good, probably right about there. You can scroll up to see the details. We get the trends. The only thing that needs editing is the chart title. Click inside the object on the chart title. You can see it's its own object. Click again and you're inside, changing up the text. So let's click and drag across chart title and type in Q1 revenues. I'm going to add 2014 here. And then click outside these selected objects to see the end result. Looks pretty good. Very fast and easy for us to insert a chart that's recommended by Excel, a new feature here in Excel 2016. Another way to add visual interest to your worksheets here in Excel is to insert graphics or pictures. That's what we're going to do with our Landon Hotels revenue sheet. You can open up RH Revenues 0208 if you're getting caught up. And we'll go to the Insert tab on the ribbon. It's here in the Illustrations group where you find the button for Pictures. Give it a click. Now you can navigate to the location of the pictures you want to insert. If you have the exercise files in the Chapter 2 folder, you'll find this Landon Hotel logo with the white background. Give it a click and click Insert. Now it's going to be inserted right in the center of your worksheet, and as you can see, it's an object that has handles around the outside, so you can resize it. It also has this rotation handle at the top if you wanted to rotate it, which we don't. But we do want to place it in the top left corner, and it looks like it needs to be sized down. So by going to one of the corners, you'll see your mouse pointer change to a double arrow, a diagonal arrow in the corners. And to make sure we keep it the same shape, we can constrain the proportions by holding down the Shift key as you click and drag inwards and downwards until we get it to a size that's going to fit in cell A1. Let go of the mouse first, and now you can go right into the center of the picture. Click and drag it into the appropriate location. I like it right up here in cell A1. Maybe a little further left. There we go. Release and deselect by clicking in an empty cell. You can see how it really changes the look and feel of our worksheet. One of the fastest and easiest ways to really change up the appearance of our worksheet and make it more visually appealing is to apply a theme. Now, by default, there is a theme being used in the background here. Certain colors, fonts, etc. are being used in our default worksheet, but we can change that up. And that's all a theme is a grouping of different colors and fonts that go together well as special effects. So with our Landon Hotels revenue sheet here that is using the default theme, and you can open up RH Revenues 0209 if you're skipping to this movie. Let's go to the Page Layout tab on the ribbon, because over here in the Themes group, we can see a Themes drop-down button, but also if we only wanted to focus on the colors that are being used, the fonts, or the effects, we have drop-down buttons for those as well. When we go to Themes, though, we'll be making use of all 3 of those in one easy step. So let's click the drop-down for Themes. And as we scroll down the list of Office themes, you can hover over these and see things changing in the background. What you'll see are different colors, for example, in the chart down below as we hover over these. Same thing for the title across the top of our screen, the Landon Hotels Revenues 2014 title, and even the labels and the numbers that we see over here in our worksheet will change as we hover over some of these different names. And you can see it is an alphabetical listing of themes to choose from. These are presets. And yes, you can create your own as well. Let's just choose one, though, that's going to work for our Landon Hotel color scheme. I think Celestial comes pretty close. Let's give it a click. So you can see it's actually different fonts that are being used, different colors are being used. You can see them showing up down below in our chart as well. Now, if we wanted to just work with the color scheme, we can do that too. Click the colors drop down and choose a different color scheme. And that's all that's going to be affected. So for example, if we go down to Violet 2, that might work well with our Landon Hotel logo colors. I like that pretty much. We could also choose a different font groupings, and there are effects to choose from as well when it comes to working with graphics and shapes and so on, as you can see down below. We don't really have any in our worksheet, so we'll just click in the background on an empty cell to look at the end result of changing up our theme. As you work away in your workbooks here in Excel 2016, eventually you'll likely want to share your content with others, maybe to allow them to view it or even collaborate on it, giving them access to edit the content. One of the fastest and easiest ways to really change up the appearance of our Sometimes when adding many rows and columns of data, it's difficult to analyze that data, to pick up on trends, for example. And that's where a visual representation of the data can come in handy. That means creating charts or graphs. And there's a very easy and fast way to do it here in Excel 2016. We're going to explore it now with our Landon Hotels revenue sheet here for 2014. And we're going to focus on the data for Q1 for the different locations. You can open up RH Revenues 0207 if you're getting caught up. Now, one thing that could be a problem is any blank rows or columns when we go to select the content we want to create the chart from. So let's go to row 6 here, and we'll right-click right on the 6 to delete that empty row. Now, things do look a little bit cramped, so we can go in between 5 and 6 when we see the double arrow. Click and drag down to double up the row height. And then we'll click right on the 5 so that everything here is centered vertically. We'll go up to the alignment button to choose middle align. That looks a little bit easier to read, and it's not going to interfere with the data we select for our chart, which is going to be from cell A5 across to column D and down to get all of the values for January, February, and March. Now here in Excel, there are many powerful features and functions when it comes to creating charts and graphs. In fact, we could do a whole course on it. But to get one in here quickly that's going to allow us to pick up on trends for this data, we can go up to the Insert tab on the ribbon, give it a click, and in the Charts group, we're going to go right to Recommended Charts. This way, Excel is going to look at our data and figure out what charts would work best with this type of data that we've highlighted. So give it a click. Now you can see the Insert Chart dialog shows us a number of recommended charts. So here we have a clustered column, for example. There's a stacked one. We have area and line charts and graphs. Different options that will work with the data we selected. I like this clustered column here. So with that selected, you can see it's going to give us our different locations and the 3 different values so we can pick up on trends if things are going up or down. And when we click OK, there it is. We have our chart. This is an object with handles, so if we wanted to resize this, I'm going to go to the top right corner, just click and drag it down and in, so it's a little bit smaller. Now I'm going to go to the border, not on a handle, so I can click and drag it down below Q. Now you can see the Insert Chart dialog shows us a number of recommended charts. So here we have a clustered column, for example. There's a stacked one. We have area and line charts and graphs. Different options that will work with the data we selected. I like this clustered column here. So with that selected, you can see it's going to give us our different locations and the 3 different values so we can pick up on trends if things are going up or down. And when we click OK, there it is. We have our chart. This is an object with handles, so if we wanted to resize this, I'm going to go to the top right corner, just click and drag it down and in so it's a little bit smaller. Now I'm going to go to the border, not on a handle, so I can click and drag it down below Q1 here. That looks good, probably right about there. You can scroll up to see the details. We get the trends. The only thing that needs editing is the chart title. Click inside the object on the chart title. You can see it's its own object. Click again and you're inside, changing up the text. So let's click and drag across chart title and type in Q1 revenues. I'm going to add 2014 here. And then click outside these selected objects to see the end result. Looks pretty good. Very fast and easy for us to insert a chart that's recommended by Excel, a new feature here in Excel 2016. Another way to add visual interest to your worksheets here in Excel is to insert graphics or pictures. That's what we're going to do with our Land & Hotels revenue sheet. You can open up RH Revenues 0208 if you're getting caught up. And we'll go to the Insert tab on the ribbon. It's here in the Illustrations group where you find the button for Pictures. Give it a click. Now you can navigate to the location of the pictures you want to insert. If you have the exercise files in the Chapter 2 folder, you'll find this Land & Hotel logo with the white background. Give it a click and click Insert. Now it's going to be inserted right in the center of your worksheet, and as you can see, it's an object that has handles around the outside, so you can resize it. It also has this rotation handle at the top if you wanted to rotate it, which we don't. But we do want to place it in the top left corner, and it looks like it needs to be sized down. So by going to one of the corners, you'll see your mouse pointer change to a double arrow, a diagonal arrow in the corners. And to make sure we keep it the same shape, we can constrain the proportions by holding down the Shift key as you click and drag inwards and downwards until we get it to a size that's going to fit in cell A1. Let go of the mouse first, and now you can go right into the center of the picture. Click and drag it into the appropriate location. I like it right up here in cell A1. Maybe a little further left. There we go. Release and deselect by clicking in an empty cell. You can see how it really changes the look and feel of our worksheet. One of the fastest and easiest ways to really change up the appearance of our worksheet and make it more visually appealing is to apply a theme. Now by default, there is a theme being used in the background here. Certain colors, fonts, etc. are being used in our default worksheet, but we can change that up. And that's all a theme is a grouping of different colors and fonts that go together well as special effects. So with our Land & Hotels revenue sheet here that is using the default theme, and you can open up RH Revenues 0209 if you're skipping to this movie. Let's go to the Page Layout tab on the ribbon, because over here in the Themes group, we can see a Themes drop-down button, but also if we only wanted to focus on the colors that are being used, the fonts, or the effects, we have drop-down buttons for those as well. When we go to Themes, though, we'll be making use of all 3 of those in one easy step. So let's click the drop-down for Themes. And as we scroll down the list of Office themes, you can hover over these and see things changing in the background. What you'll see are different colors, for example, in the chart down below as we hover over these. Same thing for the title across the top of our screen, the Land & Hotels Revenues 2014 title. And even the labels and the numbers that we see over here in our worksheet will change as we hover over some of these different names. And you can see it is an alphabetical listing of themes to choose from. These are presets. And yes, you can create your own as well. Let's just choose one, though, that's going to work for our Land & Hotel color scheme. I think Celestial comes pretty close. Let's give it a click. So you can see it's actually different fonts that are being used, different colors are being used. You can see them showing up down below in our chart as well. Now, if we wanted to just work with the color scheme, we can do that too. Click the colors drop down and choose a different color scheme. And that's all that's going to be affected. So for example, if we go down to Violet 2, that might work well with our Landon Hotel logo colors. I like that pretty much. We could also choose a different font groupings, and there are effects to choose from as well when it comes to working with graphics and shapes and so on, as you can see down below. We don't really have any in our worksheet, so we'll just click in the background on an empty cell to look at the end result of changing up our theme. As you work away in your workbooks here in Excel 2016, eventually you'll likely want to share your content with others, maybe to allow them to view it or even collaborate on it, giving them access to edit the contents. These are the options we're going to look at in this chapter, beginning with online options for sharing. We're going to do it with our Landon Hotels revenue sheet we've been building. And if you've skipped to this movie, need to get caught up, just open up RH Revenues 0300 from the Chapter 3 folder of your exercise files. When we go to the File tab, you will notice there is a Share option down here, but there's a faster way to share online, and that is to open up the Share pane. Over here in the top right-hand corner, you'll see a Share tab. Give it a click, and if you haven't already saved your file to the cloud, you'll be given an opportunity with the Save to Cloud button. Then the Share pane will show you who you're sharing with and who's accessing it. So let's click Save to Cloud. Now you do need to be logged in. If you go up to the top right corner and see your login credentials here, it means you're logged in. If not, click there to get logged in. It could be your Windows Live account, a Hotmail account, Outlook.com. It could be a company account that uses SharePoint services, for example. Either way, once you're logged in, you will see access to your OneDrive. Give that a click, and you'll see folders that you may have used recently. Now, if you prefer, you can click the Browse button and browse to OneDrive. When we scroll up and down the list of locations, you will see OneDrive as one of your locations. And now all you have to do is save up your file. You can save it right to the root directory, or you can choose a subfolder if you wanted to, like your Documents folder. I happen to have one called Landon Hotel Documents, so I could select that and click Open. It's up to you where you put it, and you can change the name if you want. I'm going to leave it at RH Revenues 0300 and click Save. Now once you've saved it to the cloud, all of a sudden the Share pane over here on the right-hand side changes, where you can invite people to get access to your file. What it's going to do is send them out an email directly from here, and if you choose to let them edit the file, they'll get a link to the file that they can click to access your file. So let's try inviting someone. If you want to invite someone you know, go ahead. I'm going to invite someone that I know, Karen Leslie, 444. There she is at Gmail. This is a fictitious account. And if I want her to be able to edit this, I just leave things as is. Click the drop down if you only want them to be able to view your contents. But by choosing Edit, we can collaborate on the file, even work on it at the same time. You can also include an optional message, like, please edit as you see fit. There we go. I wouldn't type that if I wasn't giving Edit access. All I have to do now is click Share. Now, as soon as I do that, you can see emails are being sent out to the people I've invited. If you have contacts that you want to share with, there's a link to your contacts book right here. The address book will give you access to all of your contacts, and you can select them from there. So yes, you can share with more than one person. So now I can see who I'm sharing with. I'm the owner, and there's Karen Leslie, the person I'm sharing with. Let's go see what it's like to be Karen Leslie. We'll switch over to Karen Leslie's email account. She has one new message from David Rivers I shared. There's the name of the file with you in OneDrive. I'm going to click the message to open it up, and there is the link to the file. All Karen has to do is click this link to open up a new tab in her browser, and she's going to have access to Excel Online. Now, it does have limited functionality, but if she has Excel installed on her computer, she can use that to make changes to the file. You'll notice there is an Edit button up here. So clicking Edit in browser would allow her to go in here and make changes. Right now, she's able to see everything, viewing the contents online. Clicking Edit in browser will open it up in edit mode here in Excel Online. And when I switch back to Microsoft Excel, I can see that she is able to edit that file, and when she is editing the file, I'll know. So I can close up the share pane and go back to it anytime by clicking the tab up here, and that's how you share using your OneDrive and allowing people to either view or edit your files using OneDrive. Another way to share your Excel file with others is to send it via email, but you don't have to leave Excel. Open up your email program, start your email to the people you want to share with, and then attach the file. You can do it right from Excel. That's what we're going to do with our Landon Hotels revenue sheet here, RH Revenues 0300. If you need to get caught up, you'll find that in the Chapter 3 folder of your exercise files. Let's go up to the File tab and click there. Next, we'll go down to Share, because from here you'll see there is an email option. And when we select email, we see the different email options over here on the right-hand side. Sending a link will only be available if you're working with a file that you've saved to the cloud, which we did in the previous movie. So we could send a link directly from here. It would open up our email program and allow us to send a link to people. They would be able to click to access our file, either to view or edit. That's up to us. But the other options are to send it as an attachment. That way you'll be sending the Excel file. They'll need Microsoft Excel at the other end to open it up and view and edit your contents. Maybe you just want them to see the results. In that case, you might want to send it as a PDF attachment. The nice thing here is it's converted for you on the fly and attached to your email program, which launches by default and allows you to send off the file as an attached read-only document. Same thing for XPS, the Microsoft version of PDF. Notice also if you have a fax service provider, you can send it as a fax. Let's go to Send as PDF. When we give it a click, it's going to launch your default email program. Mine is Outlook, and you'll notice that the file RH Revenues 0300 has been converted to a PDF, so it's a copy of your file. It's attached automatically to your email. All you need to do is type in who you're sending it to. I'm going to send this off to Karen Leslie at Gmail. And the subject's already there. That's the name of the file. Of course, you could go in here and edit this. I'm going to type in please review and leave the name of the file there. And then down below, we can add an additional message if we want to. When you're ready to send, you send it off, clicking the send button, and that's it for sharing via email. Although no longer the most popular way of sharing your work with others, printing is still possible, of course, here in Excel 2016. Let's explore how we might want to print out our worksheet. We'll continue working with the Landon Hotels Revenues 2014 sheet. You can open up RH Revenues 0300 if you're getting caught up. We'll go up to the File tab, give it a click, and select Print. Now the options you see will depend on your printer. If you have the same printer as me, you'll see the same options. Otherwise, you may be seeing different options down the left-hand side. Over here on the right, you'll see a preview of what you can expect when you go to print using these settings. Notice, for me, down at the bottom, I have 2 pages, and clicking the Next Page button shows me some of my contents getting cut off and placed on the next page. Well, we might be able to fix that up. One option is to turn the page on its side. I'm going to go over to the Portrait Orientation drop-down button and switch it to Landscape. This switches it to a wider view, and I can see I'm only seeing as far as November. That means if I go to page 2, I'll see December and the totals all by themselves over there. Let's go back to page 1. There might be some other options, though, to make this fit on a page. For example, down at the bottom, I could adjust the margins. But I think I should leave the margins as is. I don't want things getting too close to the edge of the paper. I could change the paper size to a larger size if my printer accommodated it. It does not, unless I was to put in legal and turn it on its side. That could work. But another option is to scale it. Notice no scaling shows up for me when I click this drop down. I have some options like Fit Sheet on one page, fit all columns on one page or all rows on one page, and in this case I think fit on one page to fit the entire sheet is going to work. It's still legible, it's not too small, but it is shrunken down slightly to fit on one page. I can tell down at the bottom I'm on page 1 of 1 now, and that means I'm ready to print. Clicking Print allows me to send this to my printer, the default being a single copy. If I wanted multiple copies, I can bump it up or simply type in the value, the number of copies I need. I'm going to choose 1 and send this off to the printer. So it's no longer the most popular way of sharing your contents with others, but printing is still possible, and depending on your printer, you'll have a number of different print options to make it look its best.